It's that time of year. It's official visit season. It's recruiting. Let's talk about it. Biggest people coming to campus, offensive visitors. Who are the highest upside guys on this roster on the football team? We got a bunch of stuff to get into today. Let's go on Wisconsin.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to that time of year, that time that is kind of like Christmas if you really follow recruiting, where you start to get the official visitors on campus. We've talked about film, we've watched huddle, we've seen the visits lined up. This is a big one this weekend, right? A big official visit weekend for the Badgers. Let's talk about it. But first, thank you for making this one of your first listens every day. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for helping build this community. Thank you, as always, for being a part of what we're doing here. All right, let's talk about it. We're going to start with the offensive guys. I think it's a good idea before the official visits start here. We're going to step back, talk about who's coming on campus, how they win, what do the offer lists look like, what do we like about them, what does the film say, how would they fit into the roster, kind of get into all that. Today, we're going to focus on the offensive players coming. We're going to start on the offensive line. Nolan Davenport. We're going to start with Nolan Davenport. 6'6", 260-pound offensive tackle out of Massillon, Ohio. I probably mispronounced that. Composite 3-star, really good offer list. Michigan State, Mizzou, Penn State, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Stanford. Got a couple official visits lined up. Penn State's one of those. All right, so Nolan Davenport. A couple interesting things here. Transition from tight end to offensive tackle. I love those guys, right? Like that. You think back to guys like Joe Staley, David Edwards, right? Guys who were tight ends that became offensive linemen, became offensive tackles. You need certain type of feet, and you need certain type of balance, agility, quite frankly, just physical coordination to play tight end. I think all of those things translate to offensive tackle. So Nolan Davenport's got a little bit more of that athleticism in his background. Former baseball player, really good pitcher apparently at the prep level, hits 85 off the mound, right? Interesting little side note there. Would be nice if the Badgers had a baseball team. Maybe you could get a little dual action there. But again, whenever you get dual sport guys, I think this is a general rule. Whenever you get dual sport guys, you're getting guys who have just a little bit more athleticism to their game, right? They've done other sports, which means different types of coordination, different types of agility. So I think even if it's just baseball, that shows athleticism on the edges, whether you're talking defensive end, whether you're talking offensive tackle is a big deal. So that's kind of what Nolan Davenport brings. Again, 6'6", 260. Absolutely, when you turn on the film, he's got the requisite size for an offensive tackle, right? He's 6'6", pretty long, moves really well, gets off the line of scrimmage really well, finishes blocks. You always want that guy as an offensive lineman who's going to just bury people, who's going to take their will, who's going to put them in the ground. A lot of clips of Davenport doing that, getting guys down the line of scrimmage, finishing them off, getting on top of them, and then getting up and looking for more work, right? He has a great motor as an offensive lineman. He's continually looking for that second block to getting upfield, trying to help his offensive players out. So a lot to like there from a motor standpoint. Not the longest arms. Like when you compare, and we're talking kind of at the elite level, but when you compare the elite offensive tackles, Davenport doesn't quite have the huge frame, right? The huge long arms that's going to allow him to get that initial punch. That's going to allow him to kind of ride the speed rusher around the outside of the pocket. I don't see the elite NFL like measurables that you're looking for. Like a Kevin Haywood has a little bigger frame, a little longer frame. Looking at a guy like Sexton, who was in last year's class and went to Penn State, really long frame, those kind of guys. I don't see that as much with Davenport, but definitely a guy who moves really well. 6'6", finishes blocks, physical. This is where it gets tough with offensive linemen, though. And a guy like Nolan Davenport, he's 260, so he's going to have to put on a lot of weight, add a lot of power. Those are always hard to predict, right? That's why when you get the guy who some of the offensive linemen came in last year, like Haywood came in 280, 290, right? It's a little easier to project those guys. So there's more projection with a guy like Davenport, but definitely a high pedigree guy. I know Penn State's in on this battle, so he checks the physical tools. The film is good. The offer list is good. It's definitely somebody to keep an eye on. Logan Powell, the next guy, another offensive lineman. We're going to start with the big mollies here. Logan Powell, 6'4", 280 pounds, offense. He's listed as an offensive tackle, but man, when you turn on the film of Logan Powell, he looks like a guard to me. He looks like he could play center to me. In fact, I kind of like him at the inside of the offensive line. Logan Powell, a 6'4" offensive lineman coming out of Arizona, coming out of Phoenix. Really good offer list for Logan Powell. Offers from Alabama, Tennessee, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Oregon. He's got about 28 offers, right? So this is a very, very, very highly recruited kid, and really good film on the inside. Like, he looks like more of a phone booth guy. Really good movement skills. Gets off the line of scrimmage really quickly. Plays a little high. You see some of that. At times he allows, and this is more of a tackle thing, which I don't think is a big deal for Logan Powell, because I think he's going to be an interior guy. But when he's playing at tackle, he allows rushers to kind of get into him. He doesn't get the initial punch that you like to see from tackles. But as a guard, he runs through people, right? Really physical drive blocker, gets people on the ground, moves them from point A to point B. I think he's going to be great as an interior run blocker. Toughness, size, physicality, good athleticism. Again, really elite offer list when you're looking at Logan Powell. Already, and this is where we talked a little bit about Nolan Davenport, right? He's 6'6", 260. Powell's 6'4", 280, 285, right? It's an easier projection for a guy like Powell because he doesn't have to put on 30, 40, 50 pounds, and you have to wonder, well, what is he going to look like with that extra weight? This is more of a finished product already, right? Nobody's a finished product in high school as an offensive line, don't get me wrong, but there's a less projection. There's higher floor here with a guy like Logan Powell, who's already has a lot of that weight on. You already see him move with that weight. I really like him on the interior. And for a long time, we saw previous Bob Bosted type offensive line recruiting here where it felt like they were just recruiting 6'7" guys and trying to fit them into across the line of scrimmage, right? I like the fact that this staff is looking for interior guys. Like, there's something to the fact that 6'4", 6'3" allows you to have more leverage on the interior than a 6'6" guy, 6'7" guy. So Ryan Corey from last cycle, Logan Powell from this cycle. I really like the mold of interior offensive linemen they're going after. All right, let's jump into a couple comments here. Tyler Strieber, what's up, man? Let's go. Zach Bartz, locked on after dark, sign me up. Cannon L says, I've said it for months, Eugene Hilton Jr. or bust off. I'm not as high on Eugene Hilton Jr., man. Like, not as high as some other people. Like, and listen, Cannon, I love you, man. I don't know what jumps off the film on him. We're going to talk about him next week because his official visit got pushed back a week. I like him, but I kind of wonder if his last name wasn't Hilton, if he'd be getting the same amount of buzz. I'm not sure. TJ says, receiver, please. We're definitely going to talk about a receiver on this show. A couple more comments in here. Yeah, Kyle Maitre, fired up beyond belief. Official visit weekend. Let's go, Kyle. Let's eat. I can't wait. Brandon Cook, more live streams are on this time. Perfect for us West Coasters. Listen, Brandon, I'm here for you, man. I'm here. It is almost midnight on the East Coast, but I'm kind of a night owl, so it's all good to me. Couple more comments in here. Zach Bart says, would love Logan Powell on the offensive lineman. Yeah, I like Logan Powell a lot, Zach. I'm right there with you. I think he fits on the inside. I think he's a center or a guard. I think he's got a really high floor, comes from a good program. Great drive blocker, quick off the line of scrimmage, athletic. I think he's going to put 10 or 20 pounds on him. He's going to be 6'4", 305, and he's going to be kind of a beast on the interior. I like him a little more than Davenport coming in. All right, let's keep going here. A couple more guys to talk about on the offense. Let's talk about the receiver. Let's get into the – actually, let's take a quick break. I apologize. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and talk about a receiver that I think has a lot of upside and add something to this room if they're able to land him. We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. And if you listen to the show for a long time, like you kind of know what I do, right? I bet with my heart. And I bet with my heart. That's why I'm not a rich man. I'm rich in love. But when I do want to place a bet, I go to the fastest, the easiest, the simplest, the best place to do it. That's over at FanDuel, FanDuel.com/lockedon. That is the place where I go. That's where if you're on the Locked On Network, all the hosts use FanDuel because it's fast, it's easy. You get your money when you win. For those out there who do that, again, not really that's not my cup of tea as much. But over at FanDuel.com/lockedon, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with a $5 winning bet. That's $150 you can use on parlay, spreads, teasers. Listen, put some futures action in on the Badgers basketball team. I know there's some people in the chat who probably aren't in on that, but I'm telling you right now, Tanjay is going to be a problem shooting 40% from the corner. And yes, John Berger, I know you're in the chat. I know you're not on that dude's game. He's going to shoot like 38% this year. So I'm just telling you, go over to FanDuel.com/lockedon. All your betting needs, please do it responsibly. Okay, let's keep going with this show. Again, really appreciate everybody tuning in as always. I was just going to record this and drop it tomorrow, but it was getting so late. I was like, I might as well just go live. And whoever joins is more than welcome. And I'm happy to have you here. And if you're listening tomorrow, that's incredible as well. All right, let's talk about the receiver. Let's talk about, and I am probably going to not fully nail this pronunciation. Muizz Tounkara. I hope. And I apologize if I said that wrong. So this is a super interesting receiver. Okay. Muizz Tounkara, super interesting receiver from a physicality standpoint. 6'4", 6'3", 195 pounds, 3-star composite. He's out of Texas. So, kind of an interesting place to recruit receiver talent, considering all the talent that's down there. Offers from Arkansas, Arizona, Kansas. Kansas has had recently with Leipold and that staff target offensive players. Ole Miss, Penn State, among others. Again, it comes down to size, right? With Muizz, it comes down to size. He's verified at a combine event 6'3.5". So think of the last 6'3.5" receiver Wisconsin's had that's been successful, right? But they've certainly taken some flyers on guys. You think about the Tommy McIntosh flyer, that didn't really work out, just bringing in Griffin as a transfer portal guy. Certainly Tanner McAvoy got a cup of coffee there. But they haven't. Kyle Jefferson was a 6'3", 6'4" guy, if you want to go back into the Wayback Machine a little bit. You need more players with this physicality, period. Like you have to find a guy like this every cycle that you're bringing in that is 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", and you got to stack those, right? Because a lot of them aren't going to hit. It's really hard to find that 6'3", 6'4" guy that translates, because those are NFL guys, right? Those are unicorns. But here's a guy who runs pretty well. He's not a burner. He's probably about a 4.55, 4.6 guy, but he's got some long speed. It kind of gets on top of you, but 50-50 balls, catch radius, red zone threat. Does a really good job with physicality after the catch. One of the things I look for, there's certain things you can look for in film, in my opinion, right? And talking to people who know this, they've kind of said it as well. Like you can see a little bit of motor. You can see a little bit of a heart. Like watch high school film of a running back when they're getting to the outside. What do? Do they put the shoulder down and cut back inside and fight for 7 more yards, or do they just got to bounce, right? Watch film of a offensive tackle after they knock somebody down. What do? Do they find the next body? Receivers are similar, right? Watch a receiver who's fighting for yardage along the sideline, or a receiver who just steps out of bounds. Muizz has physicality. He really, on film, one of the most impressive things about him, fighting for extra yardage, shaking off tacklers, not going out of bounds. You have to, several clips, you got to throw him out of bounds if you want him to stop fighting for yards. I like that as a receiver. I like that as a 6'4" guy, because part of the appeal, listen, I forget what GM said this, but he said, football's about bigger people. It was a GM, I think it was a former 49ers GM, but he said, I'm going to stock my roster with bigger guys, because bigger guys can be bullies on the football field. But they can only be bullies on the football field if they act like bullies on the football field. Muizz has some of that, right? Physical, fights for extra yardage, makes 50-50 catches. He's got enough speed to be a threat vertically, and I think he'll get faster as he's in a strength and conditioning program. There's some footwork stuff that needs to be cleaned up, but that's true for a lot of 6'3", 6'4" receivers, right? They're kind of like baby giraffes, and rounding off routes, extra steps on comebacks, on digs, that kind of stuff can get cleaned up, but you can't teach 6'3" on the perimeter. And it's a verified 6'3", right? Like, you guys remember Nizyi Davis when he committed to Wisconsin, 4-star receiver out of Ohio. Like, his high school height was like 6'3", and then he got to Madison and he's like 6'1". And it's like, this is a verified 6'3" guy with enough speed and physicality on the edge. He could be a problem, right? If he can get into a college weight and conditioning program, continue developing as a player and get a little faster, this is the type of boundary receiver that can be a problem for other teams. The type of guy who, if he puts up, really good numbers next year, bigger programs are going to come calling, because there's just not a lot of 6'3" guys, especially in a place like Texas, that play receiver, right? So I think there's a lot of upside here. This is one of the guys I'm most excited to see if we're able to lock him down and then see what he develops into, because this is a player that we don't really have much of on the roster. Maybe Quincy Burrows a little bit, again, Vernon Griffin, but most of our receivers are a little smaller. They're more of slot guys. This is the type of player that can add something different to the roster. So I'm excited about that. Let's see, a couple more questions here. Forrest Aguirre says, he's coming, book it. I love it. Carson Matsky said, made it our way over from the Discord. I love it. Rick Tange says, what's up, Ryan? What's up, Rick? Glad to have you here. John Berger said, Nizyi Davis was really good. He had nobody around him. I thought he was fine. Was Danny Davis actually really good? I thought he was fine. Good hands catcher, never very physical, never very big, not a burner. What is Danny Davis on a really good offensive team? Is he like the fourth guy? And this is a reflection of the receiver talent we've had, and kind of the lack of receiver talent we've had, that he played as much as he did, right? He was good. He was solid. I don't think he was anything more than that. Okay, next play, we've talked about him before. Nizyi Davis, the big tight end. Really interesting player coming out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Again, about 6'5", about 220 pounds. Let me put his ticker up here. Composite 3-star player. This feels like the guy who might have the most upside offensively out of everybody that's visiting this weekend to me. He feels like a home run type of addition. When you watch the film, I went back and watched it today. I watched it initially, right? Justin was really high on him. And I said, all right, let me sit down and watch this dude. I watched him, I'm like, I like this. And then I went back and watched it again, and I'm like, this guy could blow up, right? 6'6", really good speed as a tight end. The type of player this is the type of guy that defenses just really struggle matching up with. I'm really, really in love with the film. The more I watch it, the more I like it. Offers from Duke, Vandy, Purdue, Michigan State, Kansas. He's coming off an injury, and it's not in so I think some of that film hasn't been fully out there. I don't think he's blown up as much as the talent and the ability kind of says he should. You look at the tight end room. I feel like when they're looking to get a Jackson McGunna, for example, this feels like that type of guy. Let me give you another example. This is Rob Booker, but with more physicality, right? If you remember Rob Booker from last year's class, tight end, in-state kid. I really like him. Basketball guy, committed to UCLA, came back to Wisconsin. This guy, Nizyi Davis, he's that type of athlete offensively, that type of receiver, but he's much more physical. If you remember Lance Kendricks, he had some just depleting blocks, right? That's what Nizyi Davis does on film. He takes out defensive ends. He takes out linebackers, but he also has the 6'6" frame and the speed to kind of stretch the seam. So I think he kind of gives you a little bit of what Lance Kendricks used to do if he hits his ceiling. But again, that's a big ceiling, but that's kind of where I comp him to if everything clicks for Nizyi Davis. I love this one. So he's of all the offensive guys coming this weekend, I'm going to get into a couple committed guys too. But I think Nizyi Davis is like my highest upside guy. Logan Powell is like my highest floor guy. And then Muizz adds something to the roster that we don't have. Nolan Davenport's a 6'6" tackle. You can't have enough of those. It's a really good group. So you have those four coming, and then a couple of committed players. I love it when they get committed guys on. Like, the more committed players you can have on an official visit weekend, it just helps sell the program. Players can come and see other high school athletes who have already committed, who can help sell it. They can see themselves playing with this person. This person's here. He must have believed in something. I think it makes so much sense to get those guys on campus when you have other visitors. So a couple of the committed guys they have on campus: Cameron Miller, the receiver, just committed out of New Jersey. We talked about him, the high 3-star guy. Electric acceleration. He's on campus. You love pairing him up with a Nizyi Davis. You love pairing him up with a Muizz, right? So those are skilled players. They have a good rapport. Love that. And then Michael Resky's on campus. And again, a couple other offensive linemen on campus. So you're going to pair that group up. They can help sell the program. The coaches help sell the program. I think it makes a ton of sense. Resky's a fun guy. I know we haven't talked about him in a while because he committed a while ago. If you remember Michael Resky, he is one of my favorite quotes of any offensive lineman I've talked to on this show. I asked him, what's it like playing offensive line? Like, what's the best part of it? Right. And if you remember what Michael Resky said, he said, I like making the little guys fly. It's just such an offensive lineman quote. So he's on campus as well. Really excited. I think this is a really good group of prospects coming on campus. We're going to do the defensive players probably tomorrow. But again, you've got a couple offensive linemen. Nolan Davenport, 6'6" offensive tackle. Needs to put on weight, but really athletic. Moves really well. I like the physicality. You have Logan Powell, the 6'4" guard. He's listed at offensive tackle. I think he's a guard or center. I like him a lot. He reminds me a little bit of Ryan Corey from last year's cycle. You have Muizz Tounkara, the 6'3" receiver, who I think adds something unique to the room. He's a guy who could blow up, right? If he puts together consistent film with that 6'3" frame, you could look back and say, wow, I'm really glad Wisconsin got him on campus early before he blew up. This has all the makings of a guy who in a year is going to have Texas A&M and Oklahoma after him. So lock him in, get him on campus, get somebody unique on the roster that has his physical skill set. I like that one a lot. And then again, my highest upside guy in this offensive group is Nizyi Davis. He reminds me of Rob Booker from last class, but with more physicality. And if you remember, Rob Booker was a borderline 4-star tight end. I think Davis is better. I think this would be a huge addition to the class. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. We're going to take a quick break, come back. We have a couple questions, a couple comments, including who are the biggest upside players on this football roster, right? Somebody asked me, who are the 3 biggest upside players on this roster? We're going to talk about that next. Plus, get your comments and questions on today's Locked On Badgers. All right, I wanted to say thank you so much for tuning in as always. Let's bang on some comments. Nick Flav says, Roski is a great guy. I'm a big dude from somewhere. It's my favorite quote from him. Yeah, that like Ross, when Roski's done, Michael Reski's done playing. I keep saying Roski, but Michael Reski, when he's done playing, he should do like an offensive lineman philosophy quote book, right? I like making little men fly. I'm a big dude from somewhere. Like he could do all of that in like a little book for offensive linemen, and I would buy that. Let's keep going here. Where is Bo Dragan? I haven't seen Bo Dragan in a while. Brandon Cook says, always wonder when y'all say you went and watch film on a player, you just mean their huddle clips, right? Yeah, typically it's just huddle clips. It's the best we can do for most of these players. Occasionally, so I do reach out to high school coaches. Like I've had a lot of high school coaches on the show. So typically I reach out to the high school coach as well. Maybe they have a little more film. That's happened, but typically it's just huddle film. And that's a really good point because huddle film, you're seeing highlights, right? And full game film reveals things that highlights don't. And I think that's very important to keep in the back of all of our heads. Matchy says, in a few years, our tight end room will be in a much better place. Yeah, 100%. I mean, and quite frankly, it can't be in a worse place, right? Tight end has been like Furiosa, the new movie's coming out, the Mad Max kind of ecosystem. Like, I feel like that wasteland, the Badlands, has been like our tight end room the last couple of years, right? Just nothing there. And it's scary. And there's just scary. There's no knock on anybody, but like through injuries, through defections, through a couple guys that were recruited that were pretty high recruiting hits that kind of for personal reasons and injuries kind of didn't work out. That has not been a great room the last couple of years. I think in a couple of years when you see Steck and Booker and Magana and maybe you get Davis, I think that room, I agree, Matchy, is going to be much, much better. I'm excited to see that. Nick Flav says, I wouldn't say Muizz adds something we don't have, but it's another body for a physical type we need more of. Yeah, I mean, I don't really think we do. Like, what do we have on the roster? I mean, unless maybe it's a Quincy Burrows, right? I would look at it. There's nobody on the roster I point to and say, I know he's going to be a good physical receiver this year. And it's not that Muizz, we can say he will be either down the road, but until somebody establishes himself there, you know, whether it could be a CJ Williams this year, or it could be a Bryson Green, it could be a Quincy Burrows, it could be a Vernon Griffin. To your point there, we have bigger bodies on the roster, but none of them have established themselves. So maybe we're splitting hairs on that one. Very possible. Zach Bart says, I love Nizyi Davis. Had he not been injured, I feel he would have blown up so much more. Dude feels like a bigger Magana with a willingness to block. That's a great comp, Zach. I think you said it better than I did. Like, he feels like Magana, but with a little bit more of like a physicality acumen behind him. And here's the thing, you don't have to be, I don't know, George Kittle, right, at tight end blocking where you're dominating the line of scrimmage. As long as you're physically willing, as long as you are physically capable of throwing your body, and there's some people are just soft, right? Some people, they're finesse. I shouldn't say soft. Some people are finesse tight ends. Some people are football players. There's a difference there. And you can win with both, right? This is not me casting aspersions towards anybody, for the record, but I'm just saying, like, Nizyi Davis feels like a Lance Kendricks to me if it hits. And if you remember Lance Kendricks, he was a receiving tight end first. He was explosive. He was tough to handle. But at the line of scrimmage, if you weren't paying attention as a linebacker, if you didn't have your head on a swivel, Lance would take you out. Like, he was really, really physically tough and mentally tough near the box. I think Davis has some of that, and I'm excited for it. Let's keep going here. Forrest Aguirre says, commitment breeds commitment. I 100% agree. Again, having committed players on campus with official players that are trying to weigh their college decision, I think it gives you a sense of security, right? If you go to anywhere, and you're trying to make a decision, a big decision, and you see other people in your age group, your community group, who have the same type of aspirations that you do, and they've committed to a place, it makes you feel good. It makes you feel like this place must have something, right? It makes you feel more secure if you want to make that decision. You're not on an island, So I think it's a very good point. Let's keep going here. Okay, let's do this question in here. I like this one. And if you're listening to our basketball show, we asked the question: who are the three biggest upside players on the basketball team? So we got a question from somebody up 715 way, said, who are the biggest upside football players? Maybe top three. So in the chat, let me know, right? Who are the three biggest upside players on this football roster, counting the 24 recruiting class? If everyone kind of hits their realistic ceiling, who are the biggest upside players? I got my list here, and then I want to see like who you guys went with in the chat. My list, and this is a hard question. I went number 3, Thomas Heiberger. Like, I know he's a freshman. I get it. I know he hasn't proved anything, but if we're talking upside, he's a werewolf. I've said it before. I mean, the dude just has an immense wingspan. He's like a condor, and he's a 38-inch vertical. He plays all over the field. He's wired the right way. I've talked to his head coach. His head coach can't say enough things about his competitiveness and his physicality. And here's the thing, like, if you pair up physicality and elite physical measurements with elite competitiveness, he's already made some noise in practice as a true freshman, early enrollee. He has got NFL, like early NFL draft upside. There's just very few people with his type of physical measurements and his type of athleticism. So I have Heiberger number 3, number 2, Kevin Haywood. I mean, again, like you talk to Brady Collins, and he's like, I haven't seen a freshman come in with these type of testing numbers. You talk to his dad, and he talks about the level of commitment that Kevin Haywood had. And then you see in practice, he's already kind of making a name as an early enrollee true freshman. I think he's a future, like probably a 2-year, 3-year. I mean, I think he's in the 2 deep this year, probably. And then 2 years starting, and I think he's off to the NFL. And at number 1, I have Hunter Wohler. Like, sometimes we get super enamored with the young guys, this, that. Hunter Wohler, I still think, has another level. And the level he's at is so high that if he just builds on that. I was just reading the Lindy's College Football Preview magazine. They have him first team safety in the Big Ten in a conference that's loaded with safeties, absolutely loaded. Hunter Wohler, I think, is another gear. I don't think he had the best group of pieces around him last year. This year, with more speed at the linebacker spot, hopefully with a little better depth on the defensive line, you're going to see him be more of a playmaker, more of a ball hawk. I have Hunter Wohler number 1. 4 other guys I considered: Xavier Lucas. I've raved about him since we got him. I've raved about him since he committed, and the speed has just gotten better. Now you have a 6'1" guy who's running 4.3, coming from one of the best high schools in the country. He's a future NFL cornerback if it comes together, and those are hard to find. Dylan Johnson, I'm in love with the wrestling background. I'm in love with the fact that you're getting him as like a 20-year-old. You could have him. He could be a 24-year-old on the defensive line for us. And then Tackett Curtis and Riley Mahlman are my next 2. I don't think, this comes out of the conversation I had with the Pro Football Focus, Max Chadwick. I don't think Riley Mahlman gets enough credit. And if you just zoom out a little bit, see the frame, see the size, see how he graded out last year. If he takes another step in year 2 under Brady Collins, maybe a step under A.J. Blazek, maybe he's the top offensive lineman drafted out of this group. So that's who I went with. Very curious who – I didn't even have the chat up. Let's see who the chat goes with here. So Burgers with Dylan Jones, Heiberger, yep. Nick Flay, Burrows, Griffin, Magana. That's an interesting mix. Rick Tange, Dylan Jones is my pick, yeah. Dude, I love Jones. Jones is going to be so freaking good. He's going to be so good. Nick Flay, here you go. Raphael Dunn. Yeah, that's a great one. Because there's just, again, you talk about the frame on Heiberger. Dunn's going to be like a 6'5", 6'5.5" safety with some ball skills and toughness. That's a really good one. Matchy goes Willer, Heiberger, Lucas. Yeah, love the Lucas inclusion there, Matchy. Absolutely love the Lucas inclusion. TJ, Heiberger, Tretch, and Lucas. Brandon Cook, Amari, Heiberger, and Lucas. Y'all are all in this Lucas thing, and I couldn't be more here for it, right? Again, I had a long conversation. This didn't make it on the show, but I had a long conversation with his dad. We talked on the phone, Xavier Lucas. We talked a long time about just the work that went into making Xavier Lucas the player he is and how humble he is about it. We're talking workouts on the beach in combat boots. We're talking driving there and having to invest so much time into becoming the type of player he is. It's pretty impressive. And for Wisconsin to get that guy, again, if you remember, Miami came hard after him. This is a Florida cornerback that Miami pulled out every stop, right? They pulled Jason Taylor down there to try to sell Miami. I was talking to his dad. He said they had like the area cordoned off, like something was going wrong. To Miami shut down everything to try to get this guy. He's a stud, straight up. Now, he's got to prove it now, right? It's got to come together. A lot of incredible athletes come to college and it doesn't click for whatever reason, but he has got every physical tool you want to be one of the best cornerbacks we've had in a long time at Wisconsin. Again, it's, potential's potential. Not all potential becomes realized, but yeah, I'm here for this one. Rick Tange, Tackett, question mark. Yeah, people are a little too down on Tackett, in my opinion, Rick. You got to remember, a year ago, this was one of the highest recruited linebackers in the entire country. He could have gone to anywhere. And then he entered the portal, and I know for a fact, and I have this on a couple different sources, this is one of the hotter portal recruitments for a guy as well. Ohio State was in on him, a bunch of other schools. He, again, could have gone just about anywhere. And I think because he went to USC, this is a point I made on the Discord. If you go back to Tackett Curtis's high school film, they basically just said, look, you don't have to make many reads. We're going to line you 9 yards off the line of scrimmage. We're going to turn your rocket boosters on, and you just go take people's heads off. Like schematically in high school, he was like the water boy. Like that's how he was like used. Just and he just blew up plays. Well, that's a big adjustment now coming to college, where now you have to make reads. You have to be much more aware of what the offense is doing. I think there's a bigger adjustment there than people realize. And on top of it, he went to a USC defense whose defensive coordinator got fired. They were a complete mess. They said, step in as a linebacker, as a true freshman, and lead this defense essentially. And it didn't work out. But that's really hard for a true freshman linebacker to step into a broken defense, especially with where Tack Curtis played high school and how he was used. It's almost like they expect him to step in and be Ray Lewis right away, and it didn't work out, so people were frustrated. I think people are underselling how good he could be still, because those physical tools that made him basically 4 or 5-star recruit that he was are still there. And we'll see if it comes together. Mitch James says Wohler, good call. Yeah, cannot forget about Wohler. Tyler Strieberez, Haywood, Lucas, and Lafayette. Anelu Lafayette is a total stud. That's another one, man. There's a lot of young talent. All right, we'll wrap it up there on Wisconsin. I cannot wait to see what comes out of these official visit weekends. So we're going to do defensive visitors as well. A couple other guests coming up this week, hopefully. Look for a lot of content as always. Really do appreciate you guys. Timothy Palm says Dupree was an excellent blocker, great hands, tough runner. Yeah, Dupree is another good choice for this in terms of upside. All right, we're going to wrap it up there on Wisconsin. Thank you all so much, and we'll talk tomorrow.